The alarm screamed across the Sol system. It was a sound no one had heard in 10,000 years. The great defense wall of the throne world was broken. It was not an army of monsters or green aliens. It was one man. He floated in the empty black space above Mars. He wore a suit of blue and a cape of red. The tech priests looked at their screens and felt fear. Their machines could not understand this man. He had no engine. He had no magic energy from the warp. He just was. Battle group. Solar moved to stop him. These were giant ships the size of cities. They fired lasers that could boil oceans. The beams hit the small man. The light was so bright it blinded the sensors. When the light faded, the man was still there. He did not have a scratch. He looked at the ships with sad eyes. Then he moved. He moved faster than a bullet. He flew through the middle of a grand cruiser. The metal ship snapped in half like a dry twig. Fire and air spilled into space. Thousands of crew members died in silence. The man stopped and looked at his hands. He looked confused. He did not want to kill, but his body was too strong for this universe. On Holy Terra, the ground shook. The golden throne hummed with a new noise. The Emperor of Mankind sat on his life support chair. He was a rotting skeleton held together by will, but his mind was alive. He felt a bright light enter his domain. It was not the sick light of chaos. It was the light of a yellow sun. It burned with hope. The Emperor felt pain. Hope was dangerous. Hope made people weak. In this dark future, only survival mattered. The Emperor sent a psychic command to his guards. The 10,000 golden warriors woke up. They grabbed their spears. The alarm bells rang in the palace. The stranger was coming to Terra. He was coming to save them. But they did not want to be saved. They only knew war. The man in the blue suit floated in the dark silence of space. He looked at the broken pieces of the metal ship. His cape moved slowly behind him. It was bright red. It was the only bright thing in the dark. He felt a deep sadness in his chest. He had not meant to break the ship. He had only flown toward it to ask for help. But the ship was old and brittle. His body was too hard. When he touched the hull, the metal shattered like glass. He saw bodies floating in the cold vacuum. They were frozen. He heard no heartbeats. He closed his eyes and listened to the space around him. He heard everything. The silence of space was not silent to him. He heard radio waves. He heard screams over the comms channels. He heard the hum of engines millions of miles away. He heard the panicked breathing of captains on other ships. They were afraid of him. They called him a monster. They called him a Xenos. They called him a demon from the warp. He did not know what these words meant. He only knew he was lost. He had fallen through a hole in the sky of his own world. Now he was here. He opened his eyes. He saw the red planet below him. It was Mars, but it looked sick. It was covered in metal sores. Factories puffed grey smoke into the thin air. Green lightning crackled over the cities. He saw ships turning toward him. These ships were huge. They looked like cathedrals built of iron and guns. They were beautiful and ugly at the same time. They were built for war. On the bridge of the battleship Eternal Crusader, Admiral Kreit stood by the viewing window. He was an old man. His skin was like paper. He had a metal eye that clicked when he blinked. He looked at the sensor screen. The screen showed a small dot. The dot was a man. The Admiral did not understand. A man could not live in space without a suit. A man could not break a cruiser with his body. This was sorcery. It was heresy. Admiral Kreit pressed a button on his chair. He spoke to his crew. His voice was calm. He had fought in 100 wars. He knew that fear was the mind killer. "All batteries target the anomaly," Kreit said. "Fire on my command. The gunnery crews on the lower decks ran to their stations. These were not soldiers. They were slaves. They were men and women who had been born in the dark belly of the ship. They had never seen the sun. They pulled heavy chains to load the macro cannons. The shells were the size of houses. The crews sweat and bled. If they moved too slow, the overseers whipped them. They did not know what they were shooting at. They only knew they had to shoot, or they would die. The man in space saw the guns turn. He saw the giant barrels aim at him. He raised his hands. He wanted to show them he was not a threat. "Please," he whispered. His voice carried through the vacuum because he willed it to. The sound waves hit the ship's hull. "Don't shoot. I am not your enemy." The Admiral heard the voice. It came through the speakers. It sounded like a young man. It sounded kind. This made the Admiral more afraid. Demons always sounded kind before they ate your soul. The Admiral looked at the tactical officer. "Fire," the Admiral said. The space around the fleet lit up. Hundreds of cannons fired at once. The silent void was filled with streaks of fire. Missiles with nuclear warheads flew like swarms of angry bees. Laser beams as wide as rivers cut through the dark. The energy output was enough to crack a continent. The attack was perfect. It was a grid of death. There was no escape. The man in blue did not move. He let the fire hit him. He knew he could fly away. He was faster than light, but he did not want to hide. He wanted to show them he could take it. He wanted to show them that violence would not work. The first missile hit his chest. It exploded with the heat of a star. Then 100 more hit him. The lasers boiled the space around him. A cloud of fire and radiation covered him. The fleet stopped firing. The crews waited. They watched the smoke clear. They expected to see nothing. They expected the monster to be gone. The smoke faded. The man was still there. He brushed a speck of dust off his shoulder. His suit was not torn. His hair was not messy. He looked at the fleet with disappointment. Admiral Kright gripped the railing of the bridge. His metal eye whirred. He felt a cold knot in his stomach. The weapons of the Imperium were the wrath of the Emperor. They had killed gods. They had destroyed worlds. But this man did not care. The man in space looked past the fleet. He looked toward the yellow sun in the distance. He felt its light on his skin. It felt good. It felt like home. His cells drank the radiation. He felt stronger. This universe was dark and cruel, but the sun was the same. It gave him power. He looked at the third planet from the sun. It was Earth, but it did not look like his Earth. It was grey and brown. It was covered in cities. There was no green. There was no blue water. It looked like a skull. He heard a voice in his head. It was not a radio. It was a thought. It was powerful. It felt like a hammer hitting a bell. "Begone, creature." The man frowned. The voice came from the grey planet. It came from the biggest palace he had ever seen. He focused his vision. He could see through the void. He saw a mountain range. The mountains had been carved into walls. On top of the walls were golden towers. Deep inside the towers, something was calling to him. He decided to go there. He would speak to the owner of the voice. He moved. He did not accelerate slowly. He went from 0 to light speed in an instant. The movement caused a shockwave. The space behind him rippled. The battleship Eternal Crusader was caught in the wake. The massive ship tipped over. Gravity stabilizers failed. Crew members were thrown across the decks. Alarm screamed. The man was gone before they could blink. He reached the grey planet in seconds. He stopped in the upper atmosphere. The air here was thick. It smelled of sulfur and chemical waste. He looked down at the surface. There were no forests. There were no fields. The entire planet was a city. Gothic spires rose miles into the sky. Statues of weeping angels stood on top of factories. The streets were canyons of shadow. He heard the people. There were trillions of them. He heard their cries. They were hungry. They were tired. They were afraid. He heard billions of voices praying. They prayed to the Emperor. They prayed for protection. They prayed for death. It was a chorus of misery. It broke his heart. In his world, people suffered too, but not like this. This was a world where hope had died a long time ago. He floated down toward the Golden Palace. It covered a whole continent. The walls were miles high. As he descended, the automatic defenses activated. Defense lasers on the walls tracked him. These were weapons meant to shoot down alien invasion fleets. They fired. Beams of red light hit him. He did not dodge. He flew through them. The lasers warmed his skin, but they did not burn. He flew past floating gun skulls. The skulls chattered in binary code. They fired bolter rounds at him. The explosive bullets bounced off his chest like hail. He reached the top of the outer wall. He landed on a wide platform. The stone cracked under his boots. He stood up and looked around. A door opened. It was a blast door, 10 meters tall. Out marched a squad of soldiers. They were not normal men. They were giants. They wore gold armor. They carried spears that crackled with blue lightning. They moved with perfect grace. They were the Custodes, the bodyguards of the Emperor. They did not shout. They did not ask questions. They saw a threat, and they acted. The leader of the squad was Shield Captain Valerian. He studied the enemy. He saw a human male, no power armor, no weapons. But the energy readings were impossible. The man was a biological reactor. Valerian did not feel fear. He felt tactical clarity. Target identified, Valerian said over the Vox. Engage. The Custodes charged. They moved faster than the human eye could see. To a normal person, they would have been a blur of gold. But to the man in blue, they were moving in slow motion. He watched the first spear come toward his chest. The tip was made of a metal he did not know. It buzzed with a disruption field that could cut atoms. He did not want to get hit by that. He sidestepped. The spear missed him by an inch. He reached out and grabbed the shaft of the spear. The custodian pulled, but the spear did not move. The man in blue held it fast. He looked into the red lenses of the custodian's helmet. Stop, the man said. I want to talk to your leader. The custodian did not talk. He let go of the spear and drew a sword. The sword was a long blade of power. He swung it at the man's neck. The man sighed. He caught the sword blade between his thumb and index finger. The power field sparked and died. The metal snapped. The other Custodes surrounded him. They attacked from all sides. It was a perfect killing circle. Spears thrust at his kidneys, his eyes, his heart. The coordination was flawless. The man spun. His cape whipped around. He moved faster than they did. He gently pushed them away. He did not hit them hard. He only used enough force to knock them back. But even a gentle push from him was like being hit by a truck. The golden giants flew backward. They crashed into the stone walls. Their armor dented. They fell to the ground, stunned. Valerian stood up. He was injured. His ribs were broken. But he did not stop. He analyzed the fight. The enemy was holding back. The enemy could have killed them all in a microsecond. This was confusing. Mercy was a weakness. Why was this creature weak? You are not human, Valerian said. His voice was deep and gritty. I am, the man said. He floated a few inches off the ground. I am Kal-El, but my adopted people call me Clark. I come from a place like this, but better. Lies, Valerian said. There is no place better. There is only the Imperium. Valerian signaled for reinforcements. Sirens wailed across the palace. Gunships rose from the hangars. Titans, giant walking war machines, began to power up their reactors. The man, Clark, looked at the chaos he was causing. He did not want a war. He looked at the giant gate behind the soldiers. He felt the powerful mind inside, the voice he had heard earlier. "I need to see him," Clark said. He pointed to the gate. "The one who speaks in your heads. He is the master of mankind," Valerian said. "You are not worthy to look upon him." "I don't care about worthy," Clark said. He turned and flew toward the gate. The Custodes fired their bolters at his back. The shells exploded against his cape. He ignored them. He reached the gate. It was made of adamantium and ceramite. It was thick enough to stop a nuclear bomb. Clark placed his palms on the metal. He pushed. The metal groaned. It shrieked. The hinges, which had not moved in centuries, popped like gunshots. The heavy doors bent inward. Clark pushed harder. With a tearing sound, the doors tore open. He floated into the hallway beyond. The hallway was lined with banners. They were old and dusty. The floor was covered in bones. Clark frowned. Why were there bones here? He looked closer. They were human bones. Pilgrims who had died waiting to see their god. He flew deeper into the palace. The architecture became more strange. There were machines everywhere. Cables ran along the walls like vines. They pulsed with fluids. He used his X-ray vision. He looked inside the walls. He gasped. The walls were not made of stone. They were made of people. Thousands of people were wired into the building. Their brains were used as computers. Their mouths were sewn shut. Their eyes were replaced with lenses. They were alive, but they were slaves to the machine. "What is this?" Clark whispered. He felt sick. He saw a servitor rolling toward him. It was a man with tank tracks instead of legs. One arm was a heavy bolter. The man's face was blank. He had been lobotomized. Clark floated down to the servitor. He looked into the man's remaining organic eye. "Can you hear me?" Clark asked. The servitor did not answer. It raised its gun arm. It tracked Clark as a target. "Target lock," the servitor said. Voice mechanical. "Eliminate." "No," Clark said. He grabbed the gun barrel. He crushed it. The metal flattened. The servitor did not feel pain. It tried to hit Clark with its other arm, which was a hydraulic claw. Clark caught the claw. He looked at the man's face. He saw the scars where the brain surgery had been done. "Who did this to you?" Clark asked. There was anger in his voice now. He realized the whole palace was like this. It was a machine fed by blood. He could hear the screams of the fuel. Somewhere deep below, thousands of psychers were dying. Their souls were being burned to keep a fire lit. Clark flew faster. He had to stop this. He had to save them. He reached the inner sanctum. The Eternity Gate stood before him. 2 Titans stood guard. They were Warhound class, 50 feet tall. Their weapons were aimed at him. "Halt!" a voice boomed from the Titan. Clark did not halt. He flew straight at the Titan's head. He did not want to hurt the pilot, but he had to disable the machine. He hit the Titan's knee joint. He punched it. The metal shattered. The giant machine toppled over. It crashed into the wall, shaking the foundations of the palace. The second Titan fired a plasma blast. The ball of blue sunfire hit Clark. It pushed him back. His suit smoked. His skin felt hot. It stung. This was real power, but he was stronger. He flew through the plasma. He reached the second Titan and ripped the power cables from its back. The machine powered down and slumped. Clark stood before the Eternity Gate. He took a deep breath. He prepared to break it down. But the gate opened on its own. Golden light spilled out. It was blinding. It smelled of ozone and incense. Clark floated into the light. He was in a vast room. It was the size of a city. The ceiling was lost in smoke. In the center of the room was a pyramid of golden machinery, and at the top of the pyramid sat a giant. The giant was not like the soldiers outside. He was huge, but he was broken. He was a skeleton wrapped in gold armor. Wires and tubes went into his skull. His eye sockets were empty black pits, but the power coming from him was immense. It pressed down on Clark like a physical weight. Clark floated up the steps of the pyramid. He stopped 10 feet away from the skeleton. The Emperor of Mankind sat on the golden throne. Clark looked at the corpse. He felt confused. This was the god they prayed to? This dead thing. I am not dead, the voice said in Clark's mind. Clark grabbed his head. The voice was loud. It hurt. You are a stranger, the voice said. You reek of a timeline that never was. You smell of hope. Why are you here? I came to help, Clark said out loud. He lowered his hands. I saw your ships. I saw your people. They are suffering. They are slaves. They are survivors, the Emperor replied. The voice sounded like 1,000 people speaking at once. Some were weeping, some were screaming. The universe is a forest of wolves. I keep the fire burning so they do not get eaten in the dark. You are eating them, Clark shouted. He pointed at the tubes feeding the throne. He could see the souls of young psychers flowing into the machine. You are killing them to stay alive. I am killing thousands to save trillions, the Emperor said. It is simple math. You are a child. You do not understand sacrifice. I understand that this is wrong, Clark said. I can save you. I can take you off this machine. I can use my technology. My fortress of solitude has healing pods. We can fix this. You don't have to eat people. The empty eyes of the skull seemed to look at Clark. The psychic pressure increased. The air in the room began to crackle. If you remove me, the fire goes out, the Emperor said. If the fire goes out, the warp spills in. Demons will consume Terra. Humanity will die. Your morality is a luxury. We do not have luxuries here. We have only war. Clark shook his head. No. There is always a better way. I won't let you keep doing this. Clark floated closer. He reached out a hand. He was going to pull the plugs. He was going to save the man from the machine. Do not touch me, the Emperor warned. I have to, Clark said. He touched the golden arm of the armor. The moment his skin touched the metal, reality screamed. The Emperor did not use a physical attack. He used his mind. He unleashed a psychic hammer blow. It was an attack meant to erase a soul from existence. It was the same power that had killed his son Horus. Clark was thrown backward. He flew across the vast room. He crashed into a pillar of marble. The pillar exploded. Clark fell to the floor. He coughed. There was blood on his lips. He looked up. He was dizzy. He had never felt pain like this. It wasn't physical pain. It was his very essence being torn apart. The Emperor spoke again. The voice was colder now. You are strong, stronger than a Primarch. But your mind is weak. You are soft. You think you can save everyone. You will learn. In this galaxy, you can save no one, not even yourself. Clark stood up. He wiped the blood from his mouth. His eyes began to glow red. He was not angry. He was determined. I will show you, Clark said. I will show you that hope is not a weakness. The alarm bells of terror rang louder. The Captain General of the Custodes, Trajan Valoris, ran into the throne room. He had 1,000 warriors with him. They saw the intruder standing up. They saw the Emperor's psychic shield flaring. Kill him, Valoris shouted. The 1,000 golden warriors charged. Clark floated up. His eyes burned with heat vision. He did not fire at the soldiers. He fired at the floor. He carved a line of molten rock between him and them. "I don't want to fight you," Clark yelled. But they did not stop. They jumped over the fire. They threw their spears. Clark realized he could not talk to them. They were too indoctrinated. He looked at the Emperor one last time. "I will find a way," Clark said to the skeleton. "I will find a way to fix your world without killing it." Then Clark looked up. He saw the roof of the palace. He crouched and launched himself upward. He broke the sound barrier instantly. He punched through the ceiling. He punched through the layers of rock and steel. He flew up and up, shattering the dome of the palace. He burst out into the smoggy sky of Terra. He kept flying until he was back in space. He looked down at the planet. It was a hive of activity. Fleets were moving. Armies were mobilizing. The whole system was waking up to kill him. He needed a place to think. He needed a place where they couldn't reach him. He looked at the sun. He flew toward it. He would go into the sun. He would rest there. He would get stronger. And he would figure out how to save these people from their own protectors. Below him, on the golden throne, the Emperor felt a new sensation. He felt doubt. The stranger had survived a psychic blast that should have killed a god. And the stranger had not tried to kill him back. The stranger had shown mercy. Mercy was dangerous. The Emperor sent a message to Mars. He sent a message to the High Lords. "Mobilize everything," the Emperor commanded. "The Angel of Hope has arrived, and we must kill him before he destroys us with his kindness." The sun was loud. To a normal human, the sun is silent because space carries no sound. But Clark could hear the burning. He heard the atoms smashing into each other. He heard the nuclear fire roaring like a billion dragons. He floated deep inside the corona. The fire was millions of degrees. It did not burn him. It felt like a warm bath. His suit was made of Kryptonian fabric. It did not melt. His skin drank the energy. Every cell in his body was a battery. They charged up. The pain from the Emperor's psychic attack faded away. The bruise on his soul healed. He closed his eyes and tried to think. He was confused. He had fought Lex Luthor. He had fought Doomsday. He had fought Darkseid. Those enemies were evil. They wanted to rule or destroy. But this Emperor was different. The skeleton man did not seem evil. He seemed desperate. He was doing terrible things, but he said it was to save people. Clark did not agree with the math. Killing one person to save two was wrong to him. There was always another way. But the Emperor had said the universe was a forest of wolves. Clark looked out from the fire of the sun. He looked at the black space. He used his telescopic vision. He saw the wolves. Far away, at the edge of the solar system, he saw tears in reality. They were purple and green wounds in the sky. He saw things trying to get in. They looked like shadows with teeth. They looked like nightmares. They clawed at the walls of the universe. The light from the golden throne on Earth was pushing them back. It was like a lighthouse in a storm. Clark realized the Emperor was telling the truth about one thing. There was something dark waiting outside. If the light went out, the monsters would come in. This complicated things. Clark could not just punch the Emperor. If he beat the Emperor, the light might go out. Then everyone would die. He needed a plan. He needed to talk to the people who ran this empire. He needed to show them he was a friend. He decided to wait. He would let them see he was not attacking. He stayed in the sun. He floated with his arms crossed. He waited for them to call him. They did not call him. They sent a machine. On the planet Mars, the fabricator general was angry. His name was Ode Audia Raskian. He was not really a man anymore. He was a building. He was the size of a skyscraper. He was made of gears, pistons, and memory banks. He ruled the Red Planet. He ruled the Adeptus Mechanicus. They were the priests of technology. They believed that machines were holy and flesh was weak. Raskian looked at the data from the sun. The sensors showed a foreign object. It was biological. It was absorbing the holy energy of the star. This was heresy. The sun belonged to the machine god. No alien was allowed to touch it. Raskin connected his mind to the new sphere. This was a wireless web that connected all machines. He spoke to the High Lords on Terra. He spoke in binary code. It was a language of zeros and ones. The entity is a parasite, Raskian signaled. It steals the motive force of the star. It must be purged. The High Lords agreed. They were afraid. The entity had broken the Golden Throne's door. It had humiliated the Custodes. If it stayed in the sun, it might get stronger. It might come back and finish the job. They authorized the use of a forbidden weapon. Raskian activated the Arc Mechanicus ship named Speranza. This ship was huge. It was as big as a continent. It had been buried under the dust of Mars for thousands of years. It was from a time called the Dark Age of Technology. Even the tech priests did not know how it worked. They just knew how to turn it on. They pressed the runes. The engines woke up. The ground of Mars shook. Dust storms covered the planet as the giant ship lifted off. It did not use normal engines. It used gravity repulsion. It pushed the planet away. The Speranza moved toward the sun. Inside the ship, thousands of slaves died. The radiation from the engines was too high. They shoveled radioactive fuel into the reactors until their skin fell off. Then new slaves took their place. The priest did not care. The mission was all that mattered. Clark saw the ship coming. He had never seen anything so big. It blocked out the stars. It looked like a city made of gold and oil. He felt a ping on his senses. The ship was scanning him. He waved his hand. He wanted to say hello. The Speranza did not wave back. It opened its mouth. The front of the ship split open. A black cannon emerged. It was not a laser. It was a gravitational beam. It was a weapon designed to crush black holes. Clark frowned. He flew forward. He wanted to intercept the ship before it got too close to the sun. He did not want them to get hurt by the solar flares. "Stop," he shouted in space. The Speranza fired. The beam was invisible. Light cannot show gravity, but Clark felt it. It hit him like a falling moon. It was not heat. It was weight. Suddenly, he weighed 1,000,000,000,000 tons. His body was crushed. His bones creaked. He was pushed backward. He was pushed deep into the sun. The gravity beam pinned him. It tried to squeeze him into a dot. It tried to turn him into a singularity. Clark gritted his teeth. He pushed back. He was Superman. He had held up the heavens. He had pulled planets. He flexed his muscles. He fought the gravity. He began to fly forward against the beam. It was slow. It was like swimming in wet concrete. But he moved. On the bridge of the Speranza, the Magos looked at his screen. His logic circuits felt fear. The target was not collapsing. The target was advancing. The weapon was at 100% power. The reactor was redlining. "Increase power," the Magos commanded. "Burn the secondary capacitors." The crew obeyed. They routed power from the shields to the gun. The beam got stronger, but it was too much strain on reality. The weapon was tearing the fabric of space, and it was aimed at the sun. The gravity beam punched a hole in the sun's surface. It disrupted the magnetic fields of the star. The sun is a delicate balance of explosion and gravity. The weapon broke that balance. Clark saw the danger. He saw the sun's core destabilize. A massive bubble of plasma was rising. It was a coronal mass ejection, but it was unnatural. It was focused. It was being pulled out by the gravity gun. The beam had created a tunnel for the fire to escape. The gun failed, The Speranza had burned out its coils. The beam stopped. Clark gasped as the weight vanished. He floated free, but he had no time to rest. The sun vomited. A spear of white-hot plasma shot out of the hole. It was wide enough to swallow the Earth. It was moving at a fraction of light speed, and it was aimed directly at the inner planets. It was aimed at Mars and Terra. Clark looked at the Speranza. The giant ship was right in the path of the fire. It was too slow to move. The crew would die instantly. Then the fire would hit Mars. It would strip the atmosphere. It would kill billions. Then it would hit Terra. It would burn the palace. Clark did not think. He acted. He flew. He flew faster than he had ever flown in this universe. He broke the laws of physics. He became a blur of red and blue. He placed himself between the sun and the ship. He was a tiny speck against a wall of fire. He took a deep breath. He inhaled the vacuum. He concentrated. He thought of winter. He thought of the ice caps of Krypton. He thought of absolute zero. He blew. His freeze breath hit the plasma. It was a contest of impossible forces. The heat of a star against the cold of a superhero. The steam explosion was massive. It created a cloud of fog in space that was millions of miles wide. Clark pushed. He used his heat vision to shape the cloud. He tried to deflect the plasma. He could not stop it all. It was too much. But he could split it. He flew into the middle of the fire. His suit began to singe. His skin turned red. He spun his body. He created a vortex. He acted like a needle stitching a wound. He pulled the plasma stream apart. He forced half of it to go up and half of it to go down. The two streams of fire missed the Speranza. They roared past the ship, stripping away its antennas and sensors. But the hull held. The streams missed Mars. They missed Terra. They flew harmlessly into the outer dark. Clark floated in the aftermath. He was exhausted. He was covered in soot. He panted. He had saved them. But he had missed something. The plasma was gone, but the magnetic shockwave was not. The sun had belched a massive electromagnetic pulse, EMP. It was invisible. It moved at the speed of light. Clark could not freeze a magnetic field. The wave washed over the Speranza. The giant ship went dark. All lights died. The gravity engines failed. The ship began to drift. The wave hit Mars. The factories stopped. The noosphere crashed. The tech priests screamed as their cybernetic brains short-circuited. For the first time in 5,000 years, the forges of Mars went silent. The wave hit Terra. On Earth, the lights flickered. The void shields that protected the palace dropped. The great guns powered down. In the hive cities, the ventilation fans stopped spinning. The air began to get stale. But the worst thing happened in the throne room. The golden throne was an ancient machine. It was sensitive. When the magnetic wave hit the palace, the throne stuttered. The machinery groaned. Sparks flew from the cables. The psychic beacon, the astronomicon, flickered. For 10 seconds the light went out. In the warp, the ships of the Imperium were navigating by that light. Suddenly, they were blind. Hundreds of ships were lost instantly. Demons swarmed them in the dark. Thousands of sailors were eaten or drove mad in seconds. Supply ships carrying food to Terra were lost. Troop transports heading to war zones were swallowed by the Imperium. On the throne, the Emperor convulsed. The interruption of the machine caused him agony. His mind was momentarily blind. The barrier he held against the dark god slipped. A rift opened in the bottom of the throne room. It was small, only the size of a man, but it was a hole into hell. From the rift, a creature stepped out. It was a bloodletter, a demon of Khorne. It had red skin and a black sword. It roared. The Custodes were ready. They were the best warriors in the galaxy, but they were shaken by the blackout. The lights were still dim. Trajan Valoris charged the demon. He cut its head off with his axe, but more poured out. 10, 20, 100. They were in the sanctum. The enemy was in the room. "Protect the Emperor," Valoris screamed. The Golden Warriors formed a wall of shields. They fought in the flickering light. Bolters roared. Swords clashed. The demons wanted to reach the skeleton on the chair. If they touched him, it was over. Back in space, Clark saw the lights go out on Earth. He heard the sudden silence of the radio waves. He realized what had happened. He had diverted the fire, but he had let the shockwave hit. He felt a sharp guilt. He had tried to help, but he had caused a blackout. He flew toward Earth. He had to fix it. He had to turn the lights back on. He reached the upper atmosphere. He saw the city planet was dark. People were panicking. Riots were starting in the streets. Without the police drones and the surveillance cameras, the gangs were rising up. They were stealing food. They were killing. Clark used his X-ray vision. He looked at the palace. He saw the fight in the throne room. He saw the red monsters. Aliens, he thought. The invasion has started. He dove. He smashed through the roof of the throne room for the second time. Debris fell on the demons. Clark landed in the middle of the fight. He did not hold back this time. These were monsters. They had no souls he could hear. They were made of hate. Clark moved at super speed. He grabbed a demon by the neck and threw it back into the rift. He punched another one, shattering it into dust. He used his heat vision to weld the rift shut. He burned the edges of reality until they fused together. The room fell silent. The demons were gone. The Custodes stood panting. Their armor was scratched. Blood was on the floor. Clark turned to the Emperor. The skeleton was slumped forward. The machine was humming unevenly. "I didn't mean to cause the blackout," Clark said. He stepped forward. "I stopped the sun from burning you. The machine ship, it fired at me." Trajan Valoris took off his helmet. His face was scarred. He looked at Clark with pure hatred. "You," Valoris spat. "You arrogant abomination." "I saved you," Clark said. "Saved us?" Valoris pointed his spear at the throne. "Look." Clark looked. The golden throne was damaged. A vital capacitor had blown during the surge. The light of the Astronomicon was back, but it was dim. It was flickering like a dying candle. "You broke the navigator's light," Valoris said. "The warp is lost to us. Ships cannot travel. Food cannot come. Armies cannot move. Do you know what you have done?" "I can fix it," Clark said. "I can use my technology." "No," Valoris shouted. "No more of your help. Every time you act, we bleed. You possess power without understanding. You are a child playing with a loaded bolter in a crowded room." The Emperor's voice entered Clark's head again. It was weaker this time. It sounded tired. "He is right," the Emperor whispered. "Strategic disaster. The Sol system is isolated. The supply lines are cut. Terra has food for 30 days. After that, the cannibalism begins." Clark felt a cold stone in his stomach. He looked at his hands. He had saved them from the fire, but he had doomed them to starvation. "I will get food," Clark said. "I will bring ships. I will push them here myself if I have to." "It is not just food," the Emperor said. "It is faith. You have shown them that the throne is vulnerable. You have shown them the lights can go out. Fear is spreading. Fear feeds the dark gods. You are feeding my enemies just by being here." Clark looked at the Custodes. They were not attacking him. They were looking at him with despair. They knew they couldn't kill him, but they also knew he was killing them. "I will fix this," Clark said again, but his voice lacked confidence. He turned and walked out of the throne room. He did not fly. He walked. He needed to see the people. He needed to see the reality of this world. He walked out of the palace gates. He went into the hive city. It was a nightmare. The power was still out in the lower levels. It was pitch black. He heard screams. He saw people fighting over a rat carcass. He saw a mother holding a dead baby. The cold was setting in because the heaters were off. Clark took off his red cape. He wrapped it around the mother and the child. It was a small gesture. It did nothing to solve the problem. He realized the Emperor was a tyrant, but the Emperor was also a dam. He was holding back a flood of horror, and Clark had just put a crack in the dam. He stood on a gargoyle overlooking the chaotic city. The rain began to fall. It was acid rain. It hissed on his skin. He needed allies. He needed someone who understood how this universe worked. He couldn't trust the Emperor. The Emperor was too willing to sacrifice people. He couldn't trust the soldiers. They were too blind. He remembered the ship he had saved, the Speranza. It was full of technology. Maybe there was someone there who could explain the science of this world. Maybe he could build a new power source, a clean one. Clark looked up at the night sky. The stars looked different. They looked hostile. Suddenly, a message broadcasted across the entire planet. It was an emergency voxcast. It was coming from the High Lords of Terra. Citizens of the Imperium, the voice rasped. A great heresy has befallen us. A Xenos witch has cursed our sun. It has darkened the Emperor's light. Do not listen to its lies. Do not look at it. It wears the skin of a man, but it is a monster. Total curfew is in effect. Anyone found outside will be executed. Rationing is cut to half. Pray for salvation. Clark listened to the message. They were blaming him. They were using him to tighten their grip. They were starving the people and telling them it was his fault. He clenched his fists. The stone gargoyle crumbled under his grip. They want a monster? Clark whispered. No, I won't be their monster. I will be their hope, even if I have to force them to hope. He launched himself into the air. The sonic boom shattered the windows of the cathedral below. He flew toward Mars. He was going to find the Fabricator General. He was going to have a talk with the Machine Man. And he wasn't going to be polite this time. On Mars, Raskian watched the sensor feed. He saw the energy signature approaching. It was coming fast. The entity returns, Raskian signaled. Calculations indicate 99% probability of violence. Raskian did not feel fear. He felt regret. He had wasted the Speranza. Now he had no leverage. He opened the vault of the Noctis Labyrinth. He woke up the sleeping automata, the Cybernetica robots. They were ancient kill droids. Defend the forge, Raskian commanded. The red planet bristled with guns. The stage was set for a war between the god of technology and the man of steel. But neither of them knew that in the shadows of the asteroid belt, a third player was watching. A Necron scout ship sat silent on an asteroid. The cryptech inside watched the energy readings of Superman. The Necron was old. It remembered the war in heaven. It remembered the Catan. This biological entity felt like a Catan. It felt like a star god wrapped in flesh. The Necron sent a signal to its dynasty. Awaken, the signal said. A shard of the Burning One has been found. We must collect it. Clark flew past the moon. He did not know he was being watched by the undead androids. He only focused on Mars. He was going to fix the supply chain. He was going to force the machines to make food. He was going to bring order to this chaos, even if he had to dismantle the Mechanicus bolt by bolt. The hero had tried to save the day, but he had broken the world. Now in his attempt to fix the break, he was about to start a civil war. The era of the Star Child had begun, and it was written in blood. The Ring of Iron was the greatest fortress ever built by human hands. It was a metal halo that wrapped around the planet Mars. It was made of shipyards, gun platforms, and docks. It was the shield of the machine god. Now, it was burning. Clark Kent flew toward the red planet. He did not fly with anger. He flew with purpose. He carried a heavy metal shipping container in his hands. He had found it floating in the wreckage of a destroyed supply convoy. It was full of grain. It was a peace offering. He wanted to trade. He would give them the grain, and they would turn the machines back on. It seemed simple to him. The defenses of Mars did not see a man with grain. They saw a target. The fabricator general, Ud Audia Raskian, sat in his temple, deep inside Olympus Mons. He was plugged into the planet. He felt the sensors of the iron ring as if they were his own skin. He felt the intruder approaching. Raskian ran a logic simulation. Simulation 1. Negotiate. Probability of success, 0%. The entity is an anomaly. The Omnissiah does not tolerate anomalies. Simulation 2. Total war. Probability of success, 12%. The entity survived the sun. Conventional weapons are useless. Raskian chose Simulation 2. It was the only choice that followed the dogma. He activated the Skitari legions. He woke up the Cybernetica cohorts. In space, the silence broke. The ring of iron fired. Thousands of macro cannons lit up the dark. Flak turrets sprayed walls of lead. It was enough metal to shred a moon. Clark saw the wall of bullets coming. He sighed. He hugged the container of grain to his chest to protect it. He spun his body. He flew in a corkscrew pattern. He dodged the heavy shells. The smaller bullets bounced off his back. They felt like rain. He reached the first defense platform. It was a space station bristling with missile pods. Clark did not punch it. He did not want to kill the crew. He used his heat vision. He aimed carefully. He melted the targeting sensors. He fused the missile launch doors. Shut. The station was blind and toothless, but the people inside were alive. He moved to the next station. He flew fast. He ripped the power cables out of the generators. The lights went out. The guns stopped. He moved down the line. In 10 minutes, he disabled 20 stations. He was surgical. He was precise. He flew past the iron ring and entered the atmosphere of Mars. The sky was pink and dusty. Below him lay the endless factories. The forges were silent because of the blackout he had caused. He felt guilty again. He had to fix this. He landed in the great plaza of the Olympus Mons Forge. The ground was made of red steel. Smokestacks rose miles into the air. He set the container of grain down gently. "I want to talk," Clark shouted. His voice echoed off the metal canyons. "I brought food." The answer was a robotic screech. From the shadows of the factories they came, the Skitarii, the soldiers of the machine. They did not look human. Their legs were replaced with metal struts. Their eyes were glowing lenses. They carried radium carbines. These guns did not just shoot bullets. They shot radioactive bullets that poisoned the blood. They did not speak. They marched in perfect lockstep. Click, clack, click, clack. They formed a firing line. A tech priest raised a control rod. "Execute," the priest said in binary. The air filled with green light. The radium rounds hit Clark. They popped against his skin. He felt the radiation. It was not like the yellow sun. It was sick. It tasted like metal in his mouth. It made him feel nauseous. But it did not stop him. He walked forward through the hail of fire. "Stop!" Clark yelled. He clapped his hands together. The sonic boom was massive. It created a shockwave of air. It knocked the Skitarii flat. Their guns flew out of their hands. They tumbled across the steel ground like toy soldiers. Clark stood alone in the center of the plaza. The dust settled. Then the ground shook. The heavy doors of the main temple opened. A giant stepped out. It was a Castellan robot. It was 20 feet tall. It had a round head and no face. It had power fists that could punch through tank armor. Behind it came another, and another. A whole maniple of killer robots. And behind them, floating on a gravity platform, was Raskian. The Fabricator General was a monster of machinery. He was the size of a house. He had 100 mecha dendrites, mechanical tentacles, waving around him. His face was just a mask of gold and grill work. "Creature," Raskian's voice boomed. It sounded like grinding gears. "You trespass on holy ground. You disrupt the sacred work." "I didn't want to trespass," Clark said. He brushed the radioactive dust off his suit. "I went to Terra. They wouldn't listen. They are starving. You are the ones who make the food processors. You make the ships. I need you to turn the factories back on." Raskian's optical sensors zoomed in on Clark. He analyzed the man's biology. It was impossible. The cellular density was off the charts. The energy storage was infinite. "We cannot," Raskian said. "The motive force is disrupted. The machine god is angry. You broke the rhythm of the Sol system. I can help you fix it," Clark said. "Blasphemy," Raskian hissed. "You are flesh. Flesh cannot fix the divine. Flesh creates error. Only the machine is pure." Clark looked at the giant robots. He looked at the factories. He realized something. These people didn't care about strength. They didn't care about morality. They cared about knowledge. They worshipped technology. If he wanted to win, he couldn't use his fists. He had to use his brain. He had to use his heritage. Clark floated up so he was eye level with the giant Raskian. "You collect technology, right?" Clark asked. "You look for lost designs from the past?" "We seek the STC," Raskian recited. "The standard template construct. The sum of all human knowledge lost in the long night." Clark tapped his own head. "I come from a civilization that was older than yours," Clark said. "We traveled the stars when your ancestors were still living in caves. We mastered fusion. We mastered gravity. We mastered genetic coding." Raskian's tentacles stopped moving. The logic processors paused. "Lies," Raskian said, but his voice was less certain. Clark looked around. He saw a flat sheet of steel on the wall of a factory. It was huge, like a blackboard. "Let me show you," Clark said. He flew to the wall. He extended his index finger. He used his heat vision. He turned the beam down to a fine point. He began to draw. He did not draw a picture. He drew a schematic. He drew the blueprint for a Kryptonian phantom drive. It was an engine that folded space. It did not use the warp. It did not need a navigator. It was clean, safe, faster than light travel. He drew the math. He wrote the equations in universal constants, hydrogen ratios, electron variance. The tech priests on the ground watched. At first they were angry. Then they were confused. Then they were mesmerized. They recorded the laser etching with their ocular implants. They ran the numbers. The math worked. It was elegant. It was perfect. It was a technology they had never seen, yet it followed the laws of physics. Raskian moved his platform closer. He read the wall. His internal cooling fan spun up to maximum speed. He was overheating with excitement. This is not warpcraft," Raskian muttered. "This is pure physics. Where did you get this?" "My father taught me," Clark said. He finished the drawing. He turned to face them. "I have 1,000 more in my head. I know how to build reactors that fit in a thimble. I know how to make metal that heals itself." The Skitarii lowered their guns. The priests fell to their knees. They were not bowing to Clark. They were bowing to the data. To them, This data was a piece of God. Give it to us, Raskian demanded. The greed in his voice was terrible. Submit to the Mechanicus. We will extract your brain. We will download the sacred data. Clark shook his head. No, I keep my brain. But I will teach you. I will give you the designs. But you have to do something for me. Name it, Raskian said. He would trade 1,000 planets for an STC. Restart the supply lines to Terra, Clark said. Double the food production. And stop listening to the High Lords when they tell you to starve the people. You work with me now. We save humanity together. Raskian calculated. To disobey Terra was treason. It could lead to civil war. But to lose this technology was a sin against the Omnissiah. The logic was clear. The quest for knowledge was the highest law. Raskian bowed his massive metal body. Agreed, Raskian said. The pact is sealed. Clark smiled. He had done it. He hadn't thrown a single punch. But the universe of Warhammer 40,000 does not allow for easy victories. Just as the truce was made, the sensors on the iron ring screamed. A rift did not open. This was not chaos. This was something colder. Space tore open. A ship appeared. It was shaped like a crescent moon. It was green and black. It was silent. It did not have engines. It moved by inertia drive. It was a Necron Shroud-class cruiser. And it was not alone. On the surface of Mars, deep in the Noctis labyrinth, the ground cracked. Green lightning shot up from the fissures. The Necrons were not invading. They were already there. They had been sleeping under the red dust for 60 million years. The energy of Clark's battle and the unique signature of his Kryptonian biology had woken them up. A pyramid of black stone rose from the ground in the middle of the plaza. It pushed the factories aside. It hummed with a noise that made teeth ache. A door opened. Out marched the immortals. They were skeletons made of living metal. They were taller than men. They held long Gauss blasters. They did not run. They did not shout. They walked with the slow inevitability of death. At the top of the pyramid stood a cryptech. He was a scientist sorcerer of the Necrons. His name was Xeras. He had 4 legs like a spider. He held a staff of light. He looked at Clark. He spoke. His voice was not sound. It was a vibration in the air. Specimen identified, Xeras said. Kryptonian. Survivor of the Rao system. Rare genetic sequence. High solar absorption. A perfect battery. Raskian panicked. The Necrons were the ancient enemy of the Mechanicus. They were the Force machine. Defend the Forge, Raskian screamed. The Castellan robots charged the Necrons. It was a clash of titans. The Imperial robots were clumsy and brutal. The Necrons were graceful and precise. A Castellan swung a fist. The Necron immortal stood still. It raised its gun. It fired a green beam. The beam hit the robot's arm. There was no explosion. The metal just vanished. It was flayed layer by layer. The atoms were stripped away. The robot's arm turned into dust. The robot fell, unbalanced. Clark saw this. He saw the power of the green weapons. He knew physics. He knew what that was. It was molecular disintegration. He flew at the Necrons. Get back, Clark warned the Skitarii. He landed in front of the immortals. He inhaled. He used his freeze breath. He encased the front rank of Necrons in a block of ice. The ice held them for 1 second. Then it glowed green. The ice evaporated. The Necrons walked through the steam. They fired at Clark. Clark stood his ground. He expected the beams to bounce off like bullets. He was wrong. The green energy hit his chest. It did not push him. It stung. It burned. He looked down. His blue suit was gone where the beam had hit, and underneath, his skin was raw. It was peeling. Clark gasped. He felt pain. Real pain. The Gauss flares were stripping his invulnerable skin away, atom by atom. If he stood there, he would be unmade. He moved. He used his speed. He became a blur. He couldn't tank these shots. He had to dodge. He circled around the immortals. He grabbed a wrecked tank. He threw it at them. The tank crushed 3 Necrons. But even as they lay crushed, their metal began to flow like liquid. They were knitting themselves back together. Reanimation protocols. They don't die, Clark realized. Cirrus the Cryptek watched with interest. He tapped his staff. Fascinating durability, Cirrus observed. Most biologicals vaporize instantly. You resist. This makes you a prime candidate for the biofurnace. Cirrus pointed his staff at Clark. A lance of dark energy shot out. It wasn't a laser. It was a time distortion beam. Clark felt it coming. He tried to fly up, but his legs felt heavy. He looked down. His boots were rusting. The fabric of his pants was turning to dust. The beam was aging him. It was aging his clothes. He pushed through the weakness. He flew straight at the Cryptek. He had to take out the leader. The Necron Lord had a personal shield. A glowing tessellated wall appeared. Clark punched it. The impact shook the pyramid. The shield flickered but held. Clark punched again and again. The shockwave shattered the windows of the Mechanicus factories miles away. "Break!" Clark shouted. He put all his strength into one blow. He channeled the solar energy in his cells. His fist glowed yellow. Crack! The shield shattered. Clark's fist connected with Xerxes' metal face. The Cryptek's head crumbled. He was thrown backward into his own pyramid. The Necron soldiers paused. Their command signal was disrupted. Clark turned to Raskian. "Now, fire everything," Clark yelled. Raskian did not hesitate. The Mechanicus unleashed hell. The macro cannons of the Iron Ring turned inward. They fired from orbit. They didn't care about collateral damage. Giant orbital shells slammed into the Necron pyramid. The black stone cracked. The green lightning faded. The Necrons, leaderless and under bombardment, began to phase out. They teleported away, back into the tomb complex, sealing the ground behind them. They were not defeated, but they were retreating to calculate a new strategy. Clark stood in the ruins of the plaza. He was panting. He had a burn mark on his chest that was healing slowly. He looked at the devastation. He had saved the forge, but the cost was high. Raskian rolled his platform up to Clark. The giant machine man looked at the Kryptonian with new reverence. He had seen the alien bleed for Mars. He had seen him share knowledge. "You fought the star gods," Raskian said, "and you lived." "I'm hard to kill," Clark said. He touched his chest. The skin was knitting back together. "We will honor the pact," Raskian said. "The Mechanicus keeps its word to those who hold the STC. We will restart the production lines. We will feed Terra." "Good," Clark said. But Raskian continued. "But we will not do it for the High Lords. We do not do it for the Emperor who sits on a failing throne. We do it for the Omnissiah. And we see the spark of the Omnissiah in you." Clark froze. He didn't like the sound of that. "What do you mean?" Raskian pointed to the sky. "To Terra. The High Lords demand we purge you. They sent a message while you fought. They ordered us to detonate the plasma reactors. They wanted to destroy Mars rather than let you take it." Clark's eyes widened. "They wanted to blow up the planet, with all of you on it." "Affirmative," Raskian said. "The flesh rulers of Terra are illogical. They operate on fear. You operate on knowledge. Mars chooses knowledge. Mars chooses you." Clark looked at the sky. He saw the pale blue dot of Earth. He had gone to Mars to fix a supply chain. He had accidentally started a secession. Mars was effectively declaring independence from Terra, with Superman as its champion. "This wasn't what I wanted," Clark whispered. "I don't want to be a ruler." "The logical path is rarely the desired path," Raskian said. "Terra will attack. They will send the fleets. They will send the angels of death. We must prepare." Clark realized the strategic chain reaction was complete. The Imperium was split in two. Terra had the authority, the history, and the sheer mass of humanity. But Mars had the guns, the ships, and the technology. And Mars had Superman. If Clark went back to Terra now, they would try to kill him. If he stayed on Mars, he was the leader of a rebellion. He was trapped. Meanwhile, on Holy Terra, the situation was spiraling into madness. The High Lord sat in the Senatorum Imperialis. The room was dark, lit only by candles. The Captain General Trajan Valoris stood in the shadows. "He has taken Mars," the Master of the Administratum whispered. "The witch has seduced the machine priests. The fabrication lines are restarting, but they are not answering our codes. They are answering his. This is the end times," another lord said. "He builds an army of heretics." "We have no choice," Valoris said. His voice was grim. "We cannot fight Superman with conventional weapons. We cannot fight him with space marines. He is too fast. He is too strong." "Then what do we do?" "We use the unthinkable," Valoris said. "We use the weapons the Emperor forbade us to touch. We unlock the dark cells beneath the palace." The High Lords gasped. The dark cells held horrors from the old night, things that could eat reality. "And," Valoris added, "we call the Grey Knights. If he is a creature of the warp, the demon hunters will banish him. If he is a Xenos, the Death Watch will find a poison. And if he is a man—" Valoris paused. He touched the hilt of his axe. "If he is a man, we will break his mind. We will unleash the Psi Titans of the Ordo Sinister. We will use weaponized terror." The order was given. The astropathic choir sang the song of war. The Imperium turned its gaze from the alien stars and looked inward. The civil war had begun. The war of the false god. Back on Mars, Clark stood on the balcony of the forge. He looked at the stars. He felt lonely. He missed Lois. He missed his parents. He was the strongest being in the galaxy, but he had never felt so small. He heard a sound behind him. It was a small drone. It projected a hologram. It was not Raskian. It was a hooded figure. A woman. She wore power armor, but she had no face, only a blank mask. She did not speak. She used sign language. "Battle sign." "We are watching," the sign said. "We are the Silent Sisterhood. We know what you are. You are not a god. You are a mirror." Clark looked at the hologram. "The mirror breaks," the signs continued, "and the shards will cut the throat of the world." The hologram vanished. Clark clenched his fist. He made a decision. He would not wait for Terra to attack. He would not wait for the assassin in the dark. "Raskian," Clark said. The Fabricator General answered over the Vox. "Yes, Architect." "Prepare the fleet," Clark said. "We are going back to Earth, but not to fight." "Then why?" "To talk," Clark said. "And this time, I'm going to make sure the whole planet hears me." He was going to broadcast the truth. He was going to try to break the indoctrination of 10,000 years with a single speech. It was the most dangerous thing he had ever done, because in the Imperium, the truth was the most illegal weapon of all. The shadow of a massive fleet gathered in the orbit of Mars. Ships of gold and red, the eagle against the cog, brother against brother, and in the middle, the man of tomorrow, fighting for a yesterday that everyone else had forgotten. The fleet of Mars moved through the dark void between the red planet and the Earth. It was a procession of iron giants. There were thousands of ships. They were shaped like hammers and anvils. They did not have the golden eagles of the Imperium. They had the skull and cog of the Mechanicus. In the center of the fleet was the flagship Iron Blood. On its bridge stood Superman. Clark looked at the view screen. He saw Earth getting bigger. It was beautiful and blue, but covered in the grey scars of cities. He felt a knot in his stomach. He was bringing an army to a planet he wanted to save. This felt wrong. It felt like he was becoming a conqueror. Raskian, the Machine Lord, stood next to him. Raskian was happy. His logic circuits were buzzing. He had the STC data. He had the strongest warrior in the galaxy. He calculated a 94% chance of victory. "We will disable the orbital defenses," Raskian said. "Then we will land the Titans. We will seize the palace." "No," Clark said. "No landing. No seizing. We park in orbit. I go down alone. I talk to the people." Raskian's gears ground together. "That is illogical. The High Lords will not let you talk. They will use the Omega Sanction." "What is that?" Clark asked. Raskian did not answer. He just pointed to the moon. Luna was the moon of Earth. It was also a fortress. It was covered in gun batteries. As the Mars fleet approached, the moon woke up. The guns turned, but they did not fire. Instead, a signal came from the moon. It was a single audio burst. "Halt in the name of the Holy Inquisition." Clark flew out of the ship. He floated in front of the fleet. He wanted them to see him. He wanted them to know he was not hiding. "I am not here to fight," Clark shouted. His voice carried to the moon. "I want to speak to the Captain General." The space in front of Clark twisted. It smelled like ozone and sulfur. Blue lightning crackled. A ship appeared from nowhere. It had teleported. It was silver. It was etched with words of banishment. It was a strike cruiser of the Grey Knights. The Grey Knights were the secret warriors of the Imperium. They were all psychers. They hunted demons. They had been told that Superman was a demon prince who had tricked the machine spirits. A hatch opened on the silver ship. 5 warriors teleported into the void. They wore silver Terminator armor. Their eyes glowed blue. They carried halberds that hummed with psychic force. The leader was Grandmaster Voldus. He looked at Clark. He used his mind to scan the enemy. He felt the immense power in Clark. To Voldus, this power felt unnatural. No living thing should be this strong. Therefore, it was warpcraft. "Demon," Voldus spoke into Clark's mind. "Your lies end here." "I am not a demon," Clark said. "I am a man from another world." "Lies," Voldus said. He raised his hammer. The 5 Grey Knights chanted. They spoke words that hurt Clark's ears. It was a language meant to hurt evil spirits. But Clark was not an evil spirit, so the words just gave him a headache. Voldus swung his hammer. He was 50 feet away, but he struck the air. A bolt of blue psychic fire shot from the hammer. It hit Clark in the chest. Clark grunted. He flew backward. This was not like the lasers. This was not heat. This was magic. It bypassed his bioelectric field. It hit his soul. He felt a burning sensation inside his ribs. Clark recovered. He flew forward. He did not punch. He tried to grab the hammer. "Don't do this," Clark said. He grabbed the handle of the hammer. The silver metal burned his hand. It was holy silver, consecrated to kill monsters. Clark's skin smoked. He ignored the pain. He ripped the hammer from Voldus's grip and crushed the head of the weapon into a ball of scrap. Voldus was shocked. The weapon was a Nemesis Force hammer. It was indestructible. "The demon is strong," Voldus yelled. "Brothers, unite." The other 4 knights pointed their halberds. They combined their minds. They cast a spell. It was the Holocaust. A storm of white fire erupted in the vacuum. It engulfed Clark. It was a fire that burned the mind, not the body. Clark screamed. He felt like his brain was on fire. He remembered every failure. He remembered failing to save his father. He remembered the people dying on the Speranza. The guilt was a weapon. But Clark was also stubborn. He had an iron will. He focused on Lois. He focused on the idea of hope. He pushed the fire away. "Enough!" Clark yelled. He clapped his hands. The shockwave in space shattered the psychic concentration of the knights. They were thrown back against their ship. Their armor cracked. Clark flew to Voldus. He grabbed the knight by the chest plate. He looked into the glowing blue eyes. "I could have killed you," Clark said. "I didn't. Go back to Earth. Tell them I am coming to talk." Voldus looked to the alien. He saw no malice. He saw only sadness. This confused him. Demons did not feel sadness. Demons felt only hunger. Voldus hesitated. But the High Lords did not hesitate. From the dark side of the moon, a new ship emerged. It was black. It had no markings. It carried a cargo that was forbidden. It opened its bay doors. A drop pod shot out. It was huge. It was the size of a building. It slammed into the surface of the moon, right below where Clark was floating. The pod opened. A Titan stood up. This was not a normal Titan. It was not a machine of honor. It was a warlord Titan of the Ordo Sinister. Its name was Polaris Albedella. It was painted with strange symbols. Inside the Titan, there was no reactor. Instead, there were tanks. The tanks were filled with psychers, men and women with magic powers wired together, screaming in eternal pain. Their pain was the fuel. The Titan raised its weapon. It was the Sinistra Manus Tenebrae, the left hand of darkness. Clark looked down. He saw the giant robot. He used his X-ray vision. He saw the fuel. He saw hundreds of people inside the machine. They were shriveled. They were crying. They were being drained of life to power the gun. Clark felt a rage he had never felt before. The Emperor used people as batteries for his chair. Now his generals used people as batteries for their guns. "This ends now," Clark whispered. He dove. The Titan fired. It did not shoot a laser. It shot a wave of pure terror. It was a psychic scream of 1,000 dying souls. The wave hit Clark. He stopped in midair. He grabbed his head. The terror was overwhelming. He felt the fear of a mother losing her child. He felt the fear of a soldier dying in the mud. He felt the fear of the dark. Clark fell. He crashed into the dust of the moon. He curled into a ball. The gun was designed to break the mind. It was working. Raskian watched from the fleet. "The ally is compromised," Raskian stated. "Engage target." The Mars fleet opened fire. The moon's guns fired back. The space between Earth and Luna became a slaughterhouse. Ships exploded. Debris rained down on the moon. Clark heard the war starting. He heard the men dying in the ships above. He knew it was his fault. He had to stop the Titan. He forced himself to stand up. The terror wave was still hitting him. His nose was bleeding. His eyes were red. He looked at the Titan. "You are hurting them," Clark screamed. He launched himself at the machine. He broke the sound barrier. He flew through the terror beam. It felt like swimming upstream in a river of nightmares. He reached the Titan. He did not punch it. He wanted to save the people inside. He grabbed the chest armor of the giant robot. He pulled. The adamantium tore like paper. He ripped the front of the machine open. He saw the tanks of psychers. They were hooked up to tubes. "I've got you," Clark said. "I'm going to get you out." He reached for the tanks. He wanted to disconnect them, but he made a mistake. He did not understand 40K technology. The tanks were pressurized. The psychers were in a delicate state of trance. When Clark ripped the armor off, he broke the containment field. The feedback loop snapped. The hundreds of psychers inside the Titan woke up all at once. They felt their connection to the machine break. They felt the raw exposure to the warp. They screamed. It was not a sound. It was a psychic death blast. The Titan exploded, but not with fire. It exploded with soul energy. Clark was at ground zero. The blast hit him. It threw him into orbit. But the blast did not stop there. It was a psychic shockwave. It traveled at the speed of thought. It hit the moon. It hit the fleet. And it hit Earth. On the planet below, billions of people were waiting. They were scared. They had been told a monster was coming. Then the scream hit them. Every person on Earth heard the death scream of the Titan's battery. But because Clark had touched it, because Clark's own mind was part of the feedback loop, the scream carried his emotions too. But it was twisted. The people did not feel Clark's hope. They felt his rage. They felt his judgment. They felt his alien power crushing the human machine. In the hive cities, people went mad. They clawed at their eyes. They attacked their neighbors. The psychic shock triggered mass hysteria. The weak-minded died instantly. The strong-minded fell into comas. In the Imperial Palace, the Astronomicon flickered again. The Emperor groaned on his throne. The scream was so loud it cracked the glass of the Eternity Gate. Clark floated in space. He was unconscious for a minute. He woke up. He looked down. He listened. He expected to hear relief. He expected to hear that the Titan was gone. Instead, he heard the wailing of a world. He heard Earth screaming. He heard riots. He heard the sound of a planet tearing itself apart in panic. No, Clark whispered. No, no, no. He had tried to save a few hundred people in the Titan. In doing so, he had unleashed a psychic bomb on the planet. Raskian's voice came over the comms. It was cold. Disaster, Raskian said. The psychological impact is catastrophic. The populace of Terra is in revolt. Not for us, against everything. Total anarchy. Clark floated there, paralyzed. He had wanted to bring truth. He had brought madness. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. The Grey Knight ship was still there. Grandmaster Voltus was injured but alive. He sent a message to Clark. "See what you have done, demon," Voltus said. "You tried to do good, but you do not understand the nature of the soul. You broke the seal. You let the horror out. You are the doom of us all." Clark realized the truth of the universe. Good intentions did not matter here. Physics did not matter here. The soul was a volatile chemical, and he was a match. He couldn't go down there. If he went to Earth now, his presence would only make the panic worse. The people feared him now. He wasn't the savior. He was the screaming god. Raskian spoke again. "We must capitalize on the chaos. The defenses are in disarray. We can land troops now. We can take the throne while they are fighting the riots." "No," Clark said. His voice was hollow. "Explain," Raskian demanded. "If we land now, we will have to kill millions of rioting civilians to get to the palace," Clark said. "I won't do it." "Then we lose the initiative," Raskian stated. "The Imperium will regroup. They will bring more Titans. They will bring the Indomitus Crusade fleet." "Let them," Clark said. "Pull back. Pull back." Raskian sounded almost angry. "To where?" "To Mars," Clark said. "We hold the line at Mars." Clark turned his back on Earth. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. He could hear the people crying for help. He could hear the fires burning in the cities. Every instinct in his body told him to fly down and fix it. But he knew he was the disease. He couldn't be the cure. He flew back to the Iron Blood. He landed on the deck. The tech priests looked at him. They did not cheer. They saw the look on his face. It was the look of a man who had lost his innocence. Clark walked to the bridge. He sat in the command chair. He looked at the tactical map. The Sol system was divided. Earth and Luna were red. Mars and the outer colonies were green. He had created a civil war that would last for years. He had split humanity in half. "Get me a channel to the High Lords," Clark said. The comms officer opened the channel. "This is Kal-El," Clark said. "I am speaking to the Lords of Terra." There was silence. Then a voice answered. It was Roboute Guilliman. The Primarch had returned. He had arrived during the battle. His ship, the Macragger's Honor, had just entered the system. He had seen the psychic shockwave. He had seen the madness. "I am listening," Guilliman said. His voice was calm, noble, and very dangerous. "I didn't mean for this to happen," Clark said. "Intent is irrelevant," Guilliman replied. "Only results matter. You have destabilized the throne world. You have allied with the Mechanicus traitors. You are a threat to the species." "I am the only one who can save the species," Clark said. "Your father is eating them. I want to stop it." "My father is a necessary evil," Guilliman said. "You are an unnecessary one. You have one chance. Surrender. Come to me. I will give you a fair trial." Clark looked at the fleet of Mars around him. He looked at the tech priests who were looking to him for leadership. If he surrendered, the High Lords would purge Mars. They would kill Raskian. They would destroy the knowledge he had given them. "I can't do that," Clark said. "Then it is war," Guilliman said. "Real war. I have fought gods before, Kal-El. I have fought my own brothers. Do not think you are special. I will find your weakness, and I will end you." The channel cut. Clark sat in the silence. Raskian approached. "The Primarch is a master of logistics," Raskian warned. "He will cut off our resources. He will starve Mars." "Let him try," Clark said. Clark stood up. His eyes were no longer soft. They were hard. He had learned his lesson. In this universe, you couldn't just be a hero. You had to be a general. "We need to secure the asteroid belt," Clark said. "We need the resources." "And Raskian?" "Yes, Architect." "Build the stasis pods," Clark said. "For whom?" "For the prisoners," Clark said. "We aren't going to kill the Imperial soldiers anymore. We are going to capture them. We are going to put them to sleep until I figure out how to fix this mess. I am not killing any more human beings." "That is inefficient," Raskian noted. "I don't care," Clark said. "Do it." Clark walked to the window. He looked to the stars. He realized that to save this galaxy, he might have to conquer it. He might have to become exactly what he hated. He might have to become an emperor. The irony tasted like ash in his mouth. Somewhere in the deep dark, far beyond the edge of the system, a shadow moved. The psychic scream from Terra had traveled far. It had traveled to the edge of the galaxy. It had reached the Hive Mind. The Tyranids had heard the dinner bell. The biomass of Sol was loud and distressed. A Leviathan tendril changed course. It turned toward the light of the Astronomicon. Clark did not know it yet, but he had just invited the Great Devourer to the party. This ended with the lines drawn. The Sol system was a binary star of war. Terra against Mars. The son of Krypton against the son of the Emperor. And in the dark, the monsters were sharpening their teeth. The blockade of Mars lasted for 6 months. It was a strange war. There were no big battles. There were only staring contests. The fleet of the Imperium sat in a ring around the red planet. The fleet of Mars sat inside the ring. Roboute Guilliman, the Primarch, did not order an attack. He was too smart. He knew he could not beat Superman in a straight fight. He knew that if he fired the big guns, Superman would just catch the shells. So Guilliman chose a siege. He cut off the trade routes. He waited for Mars to run out of raw materials. On Mars, things were changing. Clark Kent did not sit on a throne. He worked. He flew around the planet every day. He used his heat vision to melt the ice caps at the poles. He released water into the dry canals. He used the STC technology to build atmospheric processors. These machines scrubbed the poison from the air. For the first time in 10,000 years, it rained on Mars. It was not acid rain, it was clean water. Small patches of green moss began to grow on the red iron. The tech priests watched this with confusion. They believed that machines were holy and nature was weak, but the STC data said that terraforming was efficient, so they obeyed. They called Clark the architect. They stopped praying to the Emperor on Terra. They prayed to the Man of Steel. This made Clark uncomfortable. He told them to stop. They said yes, but they did not stop. They just prayed quietly in binary code. Clark felt trapped. He had made a paradise, but it was a prison. He could not leave Mars. If he flew to Earth, the panic would start again. If he flew to the other planets, the Imperial fleet might attack his ships. He was the strongest man in the universe, but he was stuck in a box. Then the box broke. It started with a headache. Clark felt a sharp pain behind his eyes. It was not physical. It was psychic. He heard a scratching sound in his brain. It sounded like a billion insects chewing on dry wood. He flew to the fabricator general. Raskin was busy building a new fleet of drone ships. "Do you hear that?" Clark asked. Raskin paused. His sensor spun. "Negative. Audio receptors register normal background noise." "Not with your ears," Clark said. "With your mind. It's getting louder." Raskin checked the long-range scanners. He checked the astropathic choir, the psychers who send messages through space. "Alert," Raskin said. "The choir is silent. They are catatonic. The shadow in the warp has returned." Clark looked up at the sky. "What is the shadow?" "The Great Devourer," Raskin said. "The Tyranids." In the void beyond Pluto, the darkness moved. It was not empty space. It was a living tide. A hive fleet had arrived. It was a tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan. It had been drawn by the psychic scream of the Titan that Clark had destroyed. The dinner bell had rung, and the hungry mouths had come to eat. There were no negotiations. There were no declarations of war. The Tyranids did not talk. They only consumed. The first warning came from the Imperial blockade. A patrol ship near Jupiter vanished. Then a whole squadron vanished. Then the main fleet saw them on the radar. It was a wall of flesh, millions of bioships. Some were small as cars. Some were big as moons. They did not have metal hulls. They had chitin shells. They did not have engines. They used gas bladders and psychic sails. They spewed spores into the vacuum. Roboute Guilliman stood on the bridge of the Macrage's Honor. He looked at the tactical plot. He saw the red dots of the enemy. There were too many red dots. The computer stopped counting at 2 billion. "This is an extinction event," Guilliman said calmly. He looked at the map of the Sol system. He looked at Mars. He knew the logic of war. He could not fight the Tyranids while his back was turned to Superman. He needed every gun. He needed every ship. And he needed the architect. Guilliman opened a channel. He did not use encryption. He broadcasted on all frequencies. "Kal-El of Krypton," Guilliman said. "This is the avenging sun. The wolves are at the door. I propose a truce." Clark was already in space. He was floating above the new atmosphere of Mars. He saw the wall of monsters approaching. He heard Guilliman's voice. "I see them," Clark said. "They will eat everything," Guilliman said. "They will eat Terra. They will eat Mars. They will eat the moss you are growing. They do not care about our politics." "What do you want?" Clark asked. I want you to kill them, Guilliman said. And after? Clark asked. If we survive, we will talk, Guilliman said. If we die, the conversation is over. Clark looked at the biofleet. He saw the sheer size of it. He knew he could not save Mars alone. If the Tyranids landed, they would strip the planet in hours. He needed the Imperial Navy. He needed the line of battle. Agreed, Clark said. I am coming. Clark turned to the Martian fleet. He gave the order. Raskian, launch everything. Defend Earth. Illogical, Raskian argued. Earth is the enemy. Earth is the shield, Clark said. If the shield breaks, we are next. Move. The two fleets merged. It was a sight that had not been seen since the Great Crusade. The golden ships of the Emperor flew alongside the red ships of the Mechanicus. They formed a double line of defense near Saturn. The Tyranids hit the line like a tsunami hitting a seawall. The battle was silent in the vacuum, but it was bright. Lasers cut through the dark. Torpedoes exploded. Bioacid splashed against void shields. Clark did not stay with the ships. He was the cavalry. He flew into the swarm. He was a bullet of yellow sun fire. He punched through a hive ship. The giant organism convulsed and died. Clark flew out the other side. He used his heat vision. He swept his eyes across the formations of gargoyles, winged space aliens. The beams vaporized thousands of them in a second. He was faster than their targeting. He was stronger than their armor. He felt good. This was a fight he understood. These were monsters. He didn't have to hold back. He didn't have to worry about hurting their feelings. He could just let loose. He grabbed the tentacles of a kraken ship. He swung it around like a flail. He smashed it into another ship. He clapped his hands and created shockwaves that shattered the chitin of the smaller beasts. For an hour, it looked like Superman would win the war by himself. But the hive mind was not stupid. It was an ancient intelligence. It had eaten galaxies. It watched the small blue prey. It analyzed him. It saw that he relied on solar energy. It saw that he relied on his senses. The hive mind adapted. A new type of ship moved forward. It was a psychic beacon. It projected the shadow in the warp, but it focused it. It aimed a beam of pure psychic static at Clark. Clark felt his head ring. His vision blurred. The static cut him off from the sun. It made his cells feel heavy. He slowed down. Then the swarm released the spores. These were not acid spores. They were particulate clouds. They were thick. They blocked the light. They covered Clark like a blanket of ash. He was flying blind. Then the biomonsters attacked him. They were genestealers, but evolved. They had diamond-hard claws. They swarmed him in the dark, hundreds of them. They clawed at his suit. They clawed at his skin. They found the microscopic gaps. They piled on top of him. Clark struggled. He pushed them off. He fried them with heat vision. But for every one he killed, 10 took its place. They were trying to weigh him down. They were trying to suffocate him. Guilliman saw the hero fall into the cloud. All ships, Guilliman commanded. Fire on my coordinates. But my lord, the captain said, the architect is there. He can take it, Guilliman said. The bugs cannot. Fire. The Macragge's honor fired its bombardment cannons. The shells were the size of buses. They exploded in the middle of the spore cloud. The fire burned away the spores. It burned the genestealers. Clark floated in the center of the explosion. The fire did not hurt him. It cleared the air. He saw the sun again. He took a deep breath. He looked at Guilliman's ship. He nodded. The battle raged for 3 days. The Tyranids pushed past Saturn. They pushed past Jupiter. They were taking heavy losses, but they had more biomass to spend. They crashed their dying ships into the Imperial cruisers. They boarded the vessels. On the hull of the Iron Blood, Skitarii fought against Hormigorns in zero gravity. On the surface of Luna, drop pods landed. The Tyranids were on the moon. Clark was tired. He had not slept. He had killed millions of aliens, but there were always more. His suit was torn. His cape was gone. He was covered in green alien blood. He flew to the bridge of the flagship to meet Guilliman. He phased through the wall. "We are losing," Clark said. He panted. "They are too many." Guilliman looked at the hololith. The Tyranids were bypassing the fleet. They were heading for Terra. They could sense the Astronomicon. They wanted the Emperor. "We cannot stop the fleet," Guilliman admitted. "We can only slow it down. Unless we kill the Norn Queen." "Which one?" Clark asked. "The central node." Guilliman pointed to the largest blip on the radar. It was a ship, the size of a continent. It stayed at the back. It controlled the swarm. If it dies, the synaptic link breaks. The lesser beasts will go feral. They will be easy to clean up. "I tried to get close," Clark said. "The psychic pressure is too high. It's like swimming in glue." "You need a delivery system," Guilliman said. He looked at Clark. "You are the warhead, but we need a missile to get you there." Guilliman outlined the plan. It was suicide. It required a ship to ram the Norn Queen at light speed. But ships couldn't jump to light speed inside a gravity well. The engines would tear apart before they hit. Unless the ship didn't use engines. Unless the ship was thrown. Clark understood. "You want me to throw a ship at them?" Clark asked. "No," Guilliman said. "I want you to throw my ship. The Macragge's Honor. It has a reinforced prow. It is the toughest ship in the fleet. You will push us. You will accelerate us to relativistic speeds. You will act as the engine. We will punch a hole in the psychic shield. Then you fly inside and kill the Queen." "And you?" Clark asked. "You will be on the ship." "I will lead the boarding party," Guilliman said. "We will keep the internal defenders busy while you find the brain." "It's a one-way trip," Clark said. "For the ship, yes," Guilliman said. "For us, we shall see." They executed the plan within the hour. The Macragge's Honor evacuated its non-essential crew. Only the Space Marines and the bridge crew remained. Clark flew to the back of the giant battleship. He placed his hands on the engine exhaust ports. The metal was hot. He braced himself. He dug his feet into the fabric of space-time. He pushed. The ship moved. Clark flew harder. The ship accelerated. 10,000 kilometers per hour. 50,000. 100,000. Clark pushed with everything he had. He thought about the yellow sun. He thought about the farm in Kansas. He channeled every ounce of energy in his cells. The ship became a streak of light. It crossed the distance from Jupiter to the Tyranid fleet in seconds. The Tyranids tried to stop it. They fired acid. They fired psychic bolts. But the ship was moving too fast. It was a spear of adamantium thrown by a god. It hit the Norn Queen. The impact was silent, but the visual was blinding. The Imperial battleship smashed into the side of the bioship. It punched through the chitin armor. It buried itself deep inside the wet, organic meat of the alien vessel. Clark let go. He flew into the hole the ship had made. He was inside the belly of the beast. The walls were pulsing. The air was toxic. Tyranid warriors were everywhere. They were confused by the crash. Clark ignored them. He used his X-ray vision. He looked for the brain. He found it, a massive chamber pulsing with purple light. The Norn Queen was there. It was a giant monster fused with the ship. It was birthing thousands of eggs every minute. Clark flew towards it. The Queen screamed psychically. It tried to melt his brain. Clark gritted his teeth. His nose bled. He kept flying. The Queen unleashed her guards. The Swarm Lord stepped out. It was the apex predator. It had 4 bone sabers. It moved faster than a thought. The Swarm Lord swung its swords. Clark didn't dodge. He caught the blades. The bone cut his hands, but he held on. He looked the monster in the eyes. "Not today," Clark said. He headbutted the Swarm Lord. The alien skull cracked. Clark threw the body aside. He flew to the Norn Queen. He gathered his heat vision. He didn't fire a beam. He released it as a nova. He let all the solar energy in his body explode outwards at once. The chamber turned white. The organic walls vaporized. The Norn Queen shrieked and turned to ash. The brain of the fleet was cooked. Clark fell to the floor. He was empty. He had used all his power. He was just a man now. He felt the ship shaking. The Norn Queen's death was causing a chain reaction. The bioship was dying. Clark stumbled through the hallways. He had to find Guilliman. He had to get them out. He found the Primarch in the main corridor. Guilliman was fighting back-to-back with his Victrix guard. They were surrounded by dying Tyranids who had gone feral. Guilliman was covered in ichor. His sword was flaming. Clark ran to him. "The brain is dead. The fleet is breaking." Guilliman nodded. He looked at Clark. "You look terrible, alien." "I feel terrible," Clark said. "We have to go." They ran to the teleportarium. The ship was breaking apart. The walls were collapsing. The tech priest aimed the Homer beacon at a nearby Imperial cruiser. "Energize," Guilliman shouted. The world dissolved in white light. They reappeared on the bridge of the Eternal Crusader. They looked out the window. The giant Tyranid ship was convulsing. It drifted apart. Across the system, the millions of smaller bioships stopped moving in unison. They became confused. They started attacking each other. The synaptic web was broken. The Imperial fleet moved in for the kill. It was not a battle anymore. It was an extermination. Clark sat on the deck plates. He breathed heavy. He watched the victory. He had saved the system, again. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality returned. The Tyranids were gone, but the civil war was still there. Guilliman sheathed his sword. He looked down at Clark. "You fought well," Guilliman said. "You possess courage." Clark stood up. He was weak, but he stood tall. "So, what now?" Clark asked. "Do we go back to fighting? Do you try to arrest me again?" Guilliman walked to the window. He looked at Earth. He looked at Mars. "You have changed the equation," Guilliman said. "You have proven that you are a strategic asset of infinite value. To destroy you would be a waste of resources. But to let you roam free is a risk to stability." "I won't be a prisoner," Clark said. "I know," Guilliman said. "And I cannot let you be a ruler. Mars must return to the fold. The Schism must end." Clark shook his head. "They won't accept the old ways. They have tasted progress. They have seen the STC. Then we must find a compromise," Guilliman said. "A middle path." Guilliman turned to face Clark. His face was unreadable. "I offer you a compact, Kal-El. You wish to save humanity. I wish to preserve the Imperium. These goals are often the same, but sometimes they conflict." "Go on," Clark said. "You will not rule Mars," Guilliman said. "You will act as its protector, but you will step down from political command. You will give the STC data to me. I will distribute it slowly, safely, so society does not collapse from shock." "And in return?" Clark asked. "In return," Guilliman said, "I will grant you the Sol system." "What?" "You will be the Warden of Sol," Guilliman said. "You will stay here. You will guard the throne world. You will guard Mars. You will ensure that no fleet, Xenos, or traitor ever touches the heart of humanity again. You will be the shield." Clark frowned. "That sounds like house arrest." "It is duty," Guilliman said. "If you leave Sol, if you try to fix the rest of the galaxy with your naive morality, You will break everything. You will cause chaos. But here you can ensure that the center holds. You can protect the Emperor. You can protect the people of Terra from starvation. Clark thought about it. He thought about the galaxy outside. It was a nightmare of demons and darkness. He wanted to fix it all. But he had learned. He couldn't fix it by punching it. If he stayed in Sol, he could make it a sanctuary. He could make Earth safe. He could make Mars green. He could demonstrate a better way of living. Maybe, over time, that example would spread. And the Emperor? Clark asked. The sacrifices. Guilliman's face darkened. That is not for you to solve. That is the price of survival. But if you secure the system, if we are safe from invasion, perhaps we can afford to be less cruel. Perhaps we can find other ways. It was a small hope, but it was hope. Clark looked at the blue planet. It was his home now. He wasn't going back to Kansas. This was his reality. I accept, Clark said. The pact was sealed. The scribes of the Administratum recorded the years that followed as the era of the Golden Shield. It was a strange time in the history of the Imperium. For 10,000 years, the Sol system had been a place of fear. It was a fortress under siege. Every day, the people looked at the sky and expected to see monsters. But now, the sky was safe. The monsters still tried to come. The orcs sent their jagged ships. The Dark Eldar tried to slip through the shadows to steal slaves. The traitor legions of Chaos tried to launch raids from the warp, but none of them reached the ground. They never even reached the orbit of Jupiter. Long before the enemy ships could fire their guns, they were met by a force of nature. Sensors would pick up a small object moving at the speed of light. It was a blur of red and blue. Then there would be silence. The enemy ships would drift apart, broken into pieces. The weapon systems would be melted. The engines would be disabled. The alien crews would be left floating in the dark, waiting for the Imperial Navy to come and collect them. There was no battle. There was only clean, efficient removal. The Warden of Sol was doing his job. Clark Kent lived in the sun now. He had built a fortress of crystal deep inside the burning corona. It was the only place where he could be alone. It was the only place where the noise of the world was muffled by the roar of nuclear fire. He did not need to sleep, but he rested there. He floated in the yellow light and remembered his old life. He remembered the smell of cornfields in Kansas. He remembered the sound of Lois Lane's voice. He missed them with an ache that never went away. He was the strongest being in the galaxy, but he was also the loneliest. He could not walk among the people he protected. To them, he was a god. If he landed on Earth, they would crush each other trying to touch the hem of his cape. So he stayed away. He watched them from the fire. He was their guardian, but he could not be their friend. On Mars, the promise of the architect was kept. The red planet began to change. The fabricator General Raskian used the STC designs with religious fervor. Great domes of glass rose over the equator. Inside the domes, the air was scrubbed clean. Water flowed in the ancient canals. Forests of genetically modified trees took root in the iron soil. It was the first time in an age that the color green had been seen on the Forge world. The tech priests did not abandon their machines, but they changed them. The factories became silent and clean. They produced food and ships at a rate that defied logic. The hunger on Terra ended. The grain barges arrived every hour full of bread and protein. The riots stopped. The people ate. Roboute. Guilliman used this new stability to change the war. With the Sol system safe, he did not need to keep half his fleet at home. He launched the Indomitus Crusade with renewed fury. He took the ships that used to guard Earth and sent them to the dark edges of the galaxy. He told his generals that the heart of the Imperium was unbreakable. He told them that a solar paladin guarded the throne. This story spread like wildfire through the ranks of the Imperial Guard. It gave them hope. Soldiers on distant muddy worlds fought harder. They knew that somewhere there was a hero who could not lose. It made them brave. Deep inside the Imperial Palace, the Emperor of Mankind sat on the golden throne. His skeletal body was still racked with pain. The machinery still fed on the souls of psychers to keep the Astronomicon lit. Clark had not found a way to stop that yet. It was a problem of metaphysics that even his super science could not solve overnight. But the Emperor felt a change in the warp. The Sea of Souls was usually a storm of terror. Now, around the Sol system, the water was calm. The fear was gone. The collective belief of trillions of humans had shifted. They were not just afraid of the dark anymore. They believed in the light. The Emperor looked into the future with his mind. He usually saw only ruin. He saw the Tyranids eating the galaxy. He saw chaos consuming reality. But now he saw a thin golden thread. It was a new timeline. It was a path where humanity did not just survive, but lived. It was a path where the machine served man instead of man serving the machine. It was a dangerous path. It relied on the morality of an alien who refused to kill. It relied on a boy from Kansas who thought that everyone deserved a chance. The Emperor did not understand this morality. He thought it was naive. But as he felt the warmth of the sun on his psychic skin, he admitted a single truth to himself. The plan had changed. The galaxy was still a grim and dark place. There was only war among the stars. But in one system, there was peace. A man in a blue suit floated in the heart of a star, watching over his adopted family. He waited for the next threat. He waited for the day he could finally fix the golden throne. He waited for the day he could walk on the grass again. Until then, he would watch, he would listen, and he would be the shield that never broke.